gradually we're going into that international operation as we're saying. So we're talking about now the reason why a company will also have to be selling to other country because they might have comparative advantage or absolute advantage, and they were able to make more money at a lower cost. Yeah. But guess what? There can be restrictions by countries. Yeah. Let's call it national restrictions. As you probably have heard about, US have been putting all sort of restrictions on on importing of things into the US and all of that. And you find it in all countries. Every country has their restriction. Yeah. So and why do you think countries will want to put restrictions? There are so many reasons, which you probably learned in FM if you remember. Yeah, national restrictions to importation. So some countries might not allow things to be imported into their country for so many reasons. Or even if it's going to be imported, they might want to control the amount or how it is done, or so many process around that trading. And the major reason is because they might want to manage their foreign exchange rate. Remember, a country that imports a lot, would that country have a weaker currency or stronger currency?
I think it's gonna
A
be
weaker
weaker,
one.
yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So if you import a lot, you are likely going to weaken your currency. So that might be one reason why a country might say, no, we don't want things to be imported, or we want to be, I mean, we allow importation, however, we want to control it. We don't want so amount, we want this one, we don't want that one. Yeah. Or it might just be because they just want to manage competition. Remember, this factor is also very important. If you bring things to the country, especially when there's already a local product, obviously it will increase competition in the market. And it has both pros and cons. When there is competition, price will be low, so the customers might benefit. However, it might not be good for the market, it might not be good for the economy of the country because the local country might not be able to make money as much as it would have been able to make. And if the local company is not making a lot of money, they might not be able to employ people. They might not be able to make a lot of money to even do additional investment. Whereas a foreign country company that has come into your country will make money and move all the money out to their country. So because of that, national restriction might want to play in there to make sure that the competition is not really so much that the prices are coming down and all of that. Yeah. And that also ties to another reason, which is if the national country wants to promote domestic market growth, they might not want product coming from outside of their country. And another popular one is the political reasons, yeah, which you also have seen in the US and all the other places, just for political reasons. They just don't want your product to come in. Yeah. And because we're not friends or we're enemies. Yeah. Yeah. So those are a few reasons, yeah, that might make a country restrict importations. But the question is now, how do they do it? How can they achieve those restrictions? Yeah. What are the measures that countries usually put in place to minimize importation? Yeah. And that is what you refer to as protectionist measures. Yeah. They're trying to protect their country from importation. So what are those protectionist measures that countries normally use? The first one, which is very popular at least now with Mr. Trump, is the use of tariff. Can use tariffs. And what is tariffs? We all know what tariffs is. We're talking about tax on imports. So something that probably used to be imported into a country, maybe free of tariff, Then they can say, oh, if you are selling that product $100, whatever the price you are selling it, government is going to add 50% tax on it. By the time they add 50%, something that you spent $100 automatically goes to 150. And what happens to price? Price will have to go up. So almost impossible to be able to sell that product in that foreign market. So when government tries to add that tariff, two things they are trying to do. The first one is they are trying to make sure that your product is not marketable in their country. And at the same time, they are making money from you because you are coming to sell things in their country. So customers will suffer for sure if the product has to be sold. However, usually what happens is this gives room for local markets to be able to sell. Or another country that does not have similar tariff issue with the country. Because usually when a country is giving this tariff, they don't impose it generally on all countries. Different rates to different countries. The same product, US can say tariff from Canada is 20%, from UK is 35%, from China is 55%, the same product. So you realize that different producers were able to sell their product at different prices. So eventually you can see that some countries will be favored, while some will not be favored. And that's how tariffs can be used. Likewise, they can use a quota system. Yeah. Quota is when they are putting like a cap on quantity that you can import into a country. So they can say you cannot import more than 1,000 units in a year. Unfortunately, once you make that 1,000, you can't take anything to that country again. Another country has to sell. Yeah, they can even put embargo. Talking about total prohibition. Yeah, you don't want the product to even come in at all. Yeah, into the country. Or you can just use a simple exchange control. Foreign exchange control is also very popular. Here, what we are saying is that you don't want people to be able to access foreign currency, or you don't want people to be able to sell the domestic currency. Yeah. So it's difficult. Yeah. To sell domestic currency. Remember, if you are importing something into your country, you have to pay the foreign country, and for you to pay the foreign country, you need the foreign currency. To get the foreign currency, you have to sell domestic currency. So, indirect way of a government trying to stop importation is making sure that it is difficult for anybody to sell their domestic currency, because once you are not able to sell it, there's a limit to how much you can actually buy your foreign currency and buy the foreign product. And lastly, it's just the pure admin control. It's also a subtle way of reducing importation. And what do they do here? Government will just put too many bureaucratic process for clearing. Too many bureaucratic process. So you are just discouraged by the number of steps that you have to cross for you to be able to bring anything into the country. Yeah. So that's what we refer to as protectionist measures, which affect companies or multinationals that are trying to do international trade outside different countries and all. Yeah. But do you think the multinationals will just fold their hands and be looking at these barriers? No, they will not. Multinational companies want to break these barriers. So they always try to break the barriers. So they must break it because they have to do transactions. They must find a way out. Yeah. So those measures that have been put in place by those countries to minimize importation has now become the target for multinationals to see how can they bypass it? How can they break through? And there are a few things they do. Yeah. Very important. The first one they try to do is to just invest in local market. So which means they don't have to ship products and be selling as import. They just establish a proper subsidiary in that local government, local uh, market where they want to sell to. So take for instance, if um, say you pick a company, let's say UK says, "Oh, you can't ship Apple products into our country again." Okay, no problem. What Apple can do is to just build a factory in the UK, employ people there. And instead of bringing Apple product, they are just bringing raw materials because raw materials will not be the problem. Then they will start producing in the local market. So with this, they don't have to actually import any products of Apple into the UK again because now all of a sudden UK has started manufacturing Apple products. That's one way. Yeah. Another way, which is also popular, is through trade agreements. And you've been seeing a lot of this. So the government in those different countries where the companies want to start trading across each other might come together and just have an agreement. Yeah. To say, okay, yes, we'll allow each other to do things. No, they will come with terms. Okay, to say, okay, yeah, because we agree together. Okay, you can bring this to my company, bring it to my country, you can sell this to our country, we will allow you, will not disturb you. So, and it depends. Sometimes it's between two countries. Yeah. If it's between two countries, that's what you call your bilateral trade agreement. So you have a question in exams where a company is struggling to actually sell things into another country. A proposal might be to lobby and engage the other government to see whether they can have a bilateral trade agreement such that both countries will agree. They give each other one or the other thing to say, okay, if I bring this into your country, you too can bring that one into my country. Or it might even be between more than two countries. What you've been hearing as multilateral agreement. Yeah. Or sometimes they establish what you call a free trade area. I hope you're following this story because it's quite interesting. You see where we're coming from international operations, why companies will do international operations. However, countries might not like it for things to be coming into their country anyhow. They put in restrictions there. However, these multinational companies, they want to break the restrictions because they want to make money. And how do they break restrictions? Either they invest in the local market, yeah, they invest in local market, or they decide to have some trade agreement. Yeah. So how does free trade area work? I mean, this is just talking about different countries coming together in similar geographical area, and with that they are able to do transactions among each other. So take for instance, you can have maybe some African countries in the same area, maybe West Africa. Just say, okay, all of us in West Africa, we can trade amongst each other this particular product or any product without restrictions or whatever it is. You can also have what you call the single market, or what you call the custom market. Yeah. So yeah, what you're saying is that you have a region with many countries coming together and agree on the same policy. Yeah. They form a policy, and what they're trying to achieve is a full freedom of movement. Really big freedom of movement of not just product, whether it's goods or services, capital or labor, people or money. So you're saying freedom of movement for all factors of production. Remember those four factors of production. You're saying all those factors of production will be able to move. So those factors we're talking things like talking of capital, labor, materials, technology, anything, think about it. anything can, products and services, whatever you are doing, there's no restriction. If you are belonging to this market, then you're sorted with your production. Nothing, absolutely nothing to worry about. Yeah. Yeah, but guess what? As good as this look, because it helps those multinationals to be able to do their thing the way they want to do it, it has its disadvantage. It has its disadvantages. Yeah, and the popular one I'm going to touch on is the fact that non-members will suffer. So take for instance, if you have multilateral agreement between, say, Mexico, Canada, and US, any countries outside these three will suffer transactions into any of those three countries. So UK will suffer to sell things to Canada or to Mexico or to US because they are not part of this agreement. Yeah. So, and when you look at those kind of circumstance scenario, it doesn't make sense because you're just going to have so many small organizations coming together, small countries coming together, two countries, three countries, four countries. How many agreement are you going to be talking about? And that was what gave rise to things, organizations that are actually much more encompassing. Global organizations like World Trade Organization, talking of IMF, such things like that. Even World Bank. So instead of us just talking about, oh, we have bilateral agreement, multilateral agreements with three countries, with two countries. Now you're talking about global organizations being formed to make sure that we achieve the objective that all these small organizations are trying to achieve. But at the same time, we are able to cater for more people and not just few people. Because when you look at these huge organizations, you will realize that almost all the countries in the world are members. Yeah. Like for World Trade Organization, you have more than 164 countries here. Yeah, I know few countries are not part of this. Like Iran is not part of World Trade Organization. Even I'm not sure. I think Algeria also is not part of that. Yeah. So just few countries are not surprisingly part of the World Trade Organization. So which means if you're already part of World Trade Organizations, you're going to benefit as a member. So because this will discourage those little small side agreements between each of those few countries. At the same time, it will minimize barriers to international trading, right? So enough of those ad hoc groups, I mean, that non-members are not able to benefit. Yeah. And in addition to minimizing barriers, yeah, so like I said, all of them, they focus on minimizing barriers to international trade, but also they also helps with conflict resolution. So they will resolve trade disputes. So you're practically just having one stop shop for a lot of problems. Yeah. So, and in addition to that, a- an organization like IMF will even do more because those ones are looking more into even the economy of all these countries, ensuring that the global currencies are stable as much as they can, though individual country definitely has a lot of role to play. Yeah, but in addition, they're even going to produce credit facilities. So if you don't have money as a country, you might be able to borrow. Yeah, as a member of IMF. Yeah. Some likewise, World Bank as well, especially trying to support in developing countries and all of that. So those are the key functions of those organizations and what they try to do. Majorly trying to make ensure that those barriers to international trades are minimized as much as possible. And at the same time, they are trying to cover a lot of grants, not just talking about the few countries who are members forming ad hoc organizations, but rather you're having almost the whole world being part of an organization. So in that case, you're able to achieve limited barrier to international trade. Yeah, very, very important. Yeah, I want to round up this part quickly. Um, let's round this up with international financial market. Yeah, I want this to be a bit discursive. Now that you have an idea of what we're talking about on international operations. So now, talking about international financial market. Remember, what we're talking about is basically talking about how we have integrated international trades and investment with the companies that are doing them, and also how it's impacting on those countries where they are being done. Yeah. So this is a component of international financial market. How are they linked together? Yeah, you have companies in different countries that are doing different trades and investment. What do you see here? You see movement of capital. So which means capital mobility will be a big deal. And I want to ask you, when you have capital mobility where you have money being able to move across different countries, is that good or bad? Let's open it. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It might be a good thing for the country receiving the capital, but then with the company in-house, it might be a bad thing. A typical example was Apple uh, funding the Chinese manufacturing sector in the early 2000s. They moved a lot of their
Mhm.
capital over there, so much so that even till today, they're not able to move a lot of their factories back to their home country. Like,
Mm,
that's how I see it.
yeah, thanks. Good, 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 good. I like your line of thought there. Yeah. Whereas I don't definitely is looks good and can be bad, like you said. All depends on whose perspective you are looking at it. So you have a situation whereby naturally, if you stick to the money available only in your country, you might be limited to how much you're able to achieve. However, if money is able to move across countries, which means we can bring dollars into UK, you can bring pounds into Canada, people are able to access. So accessibility is easier. So definitely you know that there are advantages to it because yeah, cost of capital will be low because if people can actually borrow from different countries, there will be competition. Yeah, so there's a tendency that cost of capital will come down for sure. And likewise, fund accessibility will go up because if people can actually go to another country to source for fund, yeah, then they can avoid national restrictions, which is the local problems. Yeah. However, it's not all rosy because even if you can have access to fund, cost of capital can be lower. It can also have problems. It can create problems for us. And what is a possible problem that you will see here? FX risk. Remember, in your days of FM, you have transaction risk, translation risk, economic, which will probably do a flash. Yeah. So yes, that risk is there. The fact that you might lose some money due to just fluctuation of exchange rate. Yeah. And likewise, for a country, a multinational company that is playing in a new country, that is not its own, or that is getting money from another country, yeah, can also be exposed to economic risk of that country where he has borrowed money from, or even political risk, which is due to the actions of the government of the new country where the guy is trying to operate. So, very important, all of these things actually impacted the whole international market. And sometimes it can be as bad as what we saw if you flash back to 2008.